Hello and welcome to a check-in of my May budget. I know that it's a bit late in the month for a check-in, but we still have a little bit of time left to get our budget back on track if it's fallen off. If you're new here, we are a family of 3. My husband and I are in our 30s. We work full-time and we have a 1.5-year-old daughter. She's a little bit older than 1.5 now. We've been budgeting for a couple of years now, and I've been sharing our debt-free journey on YouTube for a little over a year, almost a year and a half, and we've been making lots of progress. Actually, just last week we paid off our truck loan, which was over $24,000. We paid it off in about a year and a half, which was a year and a half early. Next, we plan on tackling my retirement account loan, but there are some things that are coming up that we may need to fund instead and put a little bit of a pause on paying back our debt. However, we still plan to pay off that retirement account loan, which is over $30,000 within the next year. Now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, let's jump into my May budget check-in. So first of all, we do a zero-based budget, which means at the end of the month, our budget should be zero. Every dollar gets assigned a job, and most of the time that's to our sinking funds, which is how we fund most of our variable spending. We also like to pay ourselves first, so savings is usually our first goal, and a lot of that is automatic with our paycheck deductions. But we also do some manual transfers if we're not currently working on paying down debt. So for the month of May, it's actually a 3-paycheck month for my husband, and he's received 2 paychecks. I've only received 1, and I'm only expected to receive 1. April was my 3-paycheck month. And when I do our budgets, I actually budget off of my gross income, which is before taxes and 401k deductions come out. But for my husband, I just budget off of what hits our joint account, which is just 85% of his take-home pay. He keeps the other 15% for his own personal spending, which he also uses for his gas. So let's start with our income so far this month. As I said, I've received only 1 paycheck and I'm expecting to receive 2, so we're halfway there. My husband, on the other hand, he has received 2 of his paychecks, and so we're still expecting 1 more at the end of the month for about $2,450. For interest, so far this month, we've only received 19 cents. That was from one of my savings accounts. We're expecting our largest interest payment at the end of the month when our high-yield savings account pays out. Last month, I think that was $38, so I budgeted a little bit lower so that when we get that income, it'll be a boost in our budget. For rewards, we've actually redeemed credit card rewards once so far this month. These come from my credit card and they're redeemed automatically, so I don't really get to choose. I could turn that off, but I like to just let it redeem automatically whenever I hit $25. We haven't received any refunds or any other income yet this month, and we're not really expecting to. Now moving on to savings, I contribute to my workplace retirement plan, and that is 4% of my pay, so that was $209.22 that came out with my first paycheck this month, and I'm expecting that exact amount to come out with my next paycheck. I'm considering switching my contributions to Roth contributions, and I think I will mention exactly why we'll be able to do that when I do my June budget, because we have some changes coming up in July that are really going to affect our taxable income. So if you're new here, we have to keep our taxable income below the max allowable amount for the Roth IRA because we've already maxed out my husband's Roth IRA, and then he got a raise that put us above the amount that we're allowed to contribute to the Roth IRA. So we had to make sure all of our Retirement contributions were pre-tax so that we could bring our taxable income down. We also maxed out our HSAs for that same reason. Some changes are coming to the HSA as well in July. With those changes, I may be able to switch to the Roth, which is what I want to do. I have about 30% of my retirement account in Roth money, and the other 70% is in pre-tax or traditional, and I'd like to make that a little bit more of an even split, just so that I have more flexibility when we reach retirement. My husband has a Roth IRA and also a simple IRA through his workplace, and I think his is pretty similar as well. He has maybe about 25% in Roth and the rest is in traditional, but we've been maxing out his Roth IRA for a couple of years now, so his is shifting a little bit more towards the Roth, and so I'd like to bring up my Roth as well. Next, we have my daughter's 529. We have a goal of contributing $5,000 this year so that we can get a state tax break for contributing those $5,000. We haven't contributed yet to that this month. We are hopefully planning to next week. We'll see. Next is Acorns, which is my after-tax brokerage account. I budgeted $15 to contribute to this, but I only contribute $5 as an active contribution. It recurs every month at the beginning of the month. And then I have the roundups turned on, which is a feature that allows you to round up the change on every purchase that you make. And then once I hit the $5 threshold, then it contributes that amount of change from my checking account. So far this month, I've had that automatic contribution and one roundup. I typically expect to get 2 roundups, especially now that my husband's using my credit card and he's the one who makes most of the purchases. We haven't had to contribute to any of our other savings goals this month because we already met those. We made the decision to max out my husband's Roth IRA and HSA earlier in the year when the markets were down. Typically, we would contribute evenly throughout the year, but we made that decision so we no longer have to try to reach these savings goals. So now moving on to our fixed expenses. This is where my taxes come out. I'm kind of expecting that my taxes in my second paycheck will be higher than my taxes in my first paycheck because I don't think that they take out some of the deductions. And I'll get into what that deduction is. It's in my singing funds. So I think that my taxes will be a little bit higher because that's a pre-tax deduction, and so they're going to tax me on a little bit higher amount. Same for life insurance. That comes out with my paycheck, but I don't think it comes out with my second paycheck this month. And that's only because this will technically be my third paycheck for the month of May, but because my paychecks hit on Wednesday, my third paycheck actually hit in April, and that's how I budget it. Even though the date of that first paycheck was like May 1st or 2nd, because it hit in April, that's how I track it on my budget, like whenever it hits the account and not the date of the paycheck. It's a little bit confusing, but this is just how I like to do it. When the money's actually hit the account or leave the account, that's what gets recorded in my budget. Our next fixed expense is car insurance. We have USAA. We pay for 3 cars. One of them is a car that my husband never drives. I think he's thinking of selling it because he doesn't want to keep paying. I think it's like $120 every 6 months for his second car. But I don't know that that's going to change our insurance too much because we do get a discount for having more cars. It's just the way that our insurance works. And this is going to be going down, I think, in August, just because I think it's more of a safe driver discount and the length of service. Usually our car insurance goes down a little bit the longer that we're with them, which is a really nice thing for them to do. It, I guess, incentivizes us not to switch insurance companies. Next we have utilities. This just came out, and that's $260. We're on a budget billing plan, which means we pay the same amount for electricity no matter how much we use or how little we use. And actually we've been using significantly less, like this month and last month, because we don't have to turn the heat or air conditioning on yet. It's been pretty mild, around like between upper 50s and lower 80s, and so we don't really need heat or cooling. We just open the windows at night when it's hot and then close them during the day to keep the cool air in and the hot air out. It works a little bit, but sometimes the house gets up a little bit uncomfortably warm. But it saves us a lot in electricity. Next we have our internet. We paid this at the beginning of the month. That's $34.99, nothing exciting there. And then daycare, we pay this weekly. It's $300 every Monday. We've had 3 Mondays so far, so we've paid $900. And this is going to be changing next month. We are going to a new daycare, and we won't be paying weekly, we'll be paying monthly. And I think the payment is due sometime in like the second week of the month. So we'll see how that works out. It may end up that we pay the first payment in May instead of June, but we'll just see how things work out. We still need to pay the registration and get all the paperwork in. We're a little bit late on that just because we're waiting on some documentation from the doctor's office. And then our final fixed expense is our only subscription, which is my Acorns account, and we haven't paid that yet. That usually comes out at the very end of the month, sometimes at the beginning of the following month. So now let's move on to our debts. This is where we have most of our activity going on. We paid our mortgage at the beginning of the month. That was $2,630, and this also includes escrow and a tiny bit of extra payment towards the principal just to make that a nice round number. Next we have our truck. We budgeted $972.14, but because I paid that off earlier than we planned to, by like 2 weeks, we saved a little bit. That was also just an estimate of how much we were going to need to pay it off. So we made one actual payment of $311.07, and then right afterwards I paid it off. So after that automatic payment came out, I paid it off completely. I think that was a payment of $606.89, but that completely paid off the truck, and that was a total of $917.96 that was paid for the truck this month, and now it's totally gone. We no longer will have a truck payment. So we had budgeted, I think, 2 monthly payments and then a little extra to pay it off, but we only had to make that 1 monthly payment. We were paying it every 2 weeks. That was the way that we had our loan set up. It was an every 2-week payment, and it was a 3-year loan, but we paid it off a 1.5 years early. Next, we have my retirement account loan, and I have budgeted to pay an extra, I think, $6,000 something to this. Let's see if it says. Yeah, an extra $6,250. But so far we haven't paid any extra. I've only paid the one deduction from my paycheck. And I'm not really sure if I want to pay extra on this right now. And not just because the markets are up again, but because we have some other things that we want to do with this money, and I think it'll only delay paying back the retirement by like 3 or 4 months. So our original plan was to pay back the retirement account loan by October, I think. But we have the opportunity to get our bathroom redone, which is something that we've been wanting to do basically since we moved into the house, and we found a reasonable contractor who will do it for just $17,000, which is still a lot of money, but we would have to get that done this summer, I think, if we don't want to lose out on the opportunity to work with this contractor who has so far been the best price that we could find. So that would put a little bit of a pause on paying back our retirement by a few months. And we were also thinking of getting the decks redone, but that's not as much of a priority, and we don't need that done this summer. But the bathroom has been something that has really been on our to-do list from the beginning. And that's probably one of the only things that we're going to need a contractor for. Also, the kitchen eventually, but like my husband has been very, very slowly replacing all of the carpet upstairs with hardwood floors that we bought about 2 years ago, and doing all the trim, and we're repainting and everything. So we have a very slow remodel of the upstairs, but the bathroom up there needs to be done as well. So I think we may put a pause on repaying the retirement account loan just for a couple of months so that we can save up the amount to pay for the contractor to do the bathroom. But let me know what you think. As I said, it would only push us back about 3 or 4 months, because after paying off the truck, we're actually saving an extra $600 a month, because that's about how much our truck payment was. So we do have quite a bit to throw at our retirement account loan, especially with this being a 3 paycheck month. But we do have some changes coming up, as I mentioned, in July that are going to impact our budget a little bit, and we really have no idea how it's going to impact our budget. And so I kind of want to just have that money in savings until we get all of that flushed out and know how our budget is going to be changing in 2 months and going forward. So that's the retirement account loan. And finally, we have my husband's student loans. He pays these at the beginning of the month. They're $382. And we're just paying the minimums on those for now. No real plans to pay those back early. Most of them are pretty low interest rate, but there are a few that are above 4% that we may pay back a little bit early if we finish the retirement account loan, which is the biggest priority. Next, we have my sinking funds, and this is for everything that's not a fixed expense, because our spending is really variable. Sometimes we spend a lot in a category, and then we'll go months without spending in that category again. So sometimes these sinking funds go a little bit negative if we have the opportunity to make a purchase or need to make a purchase from one of these categories, even if it's not fully funded yet. And then I just work on rebuilding it back up. But we never go completely negative in all of our sinking funds. There's always something to cover if we do need to make a purchase that we don't fully have funded for. But we try to keep these funded really well and kind of overfunded. We have a goal every year for how much we want to have in there, like over the course of the year, to try to spend less than that, and then we roll over the amount for the next year. So these categories are home, groceries, car and gas, health, pets, baby, phone, gifts and donations, clothing and personal, travel and entertainment, restaurants, miscellaneous, and then the DCFSA, which is the Dependent Care Flexible Spending Account, which I mentioned earlier comes out of my paycheck pre-tax. I just call this a sinking fund just because the money goes in there with every paycheck, and then I use it to pay for daycare expenses occasionally, and it's just the easiest way to track it in my sinking funds category with the way my spreadsheet works. So I will be funding this $5,000 over the course of the year. And it came out on my first paycheck this month, but I don't think it's going to come out on the second paycheck because I think it only comes out 24 times in the year instead of 26 times, which is how many times I get paid. So for our spending, I'll start with groceries because we didn't make any purchases in home yet this month. We spent $116.18, which isn't very much because most of our stuff is covered already from bulk purchases that we made, I guess, 2 months ago now. We buy a lot of dried beans and grains like flour and oatmeal, and we store that. It helps us keep our costs down because it's so much cheaper to buy these like 25-pound bags. The price per pound is a lot cheaper than if we go and buy just a couple of pounds every few months. We are fortunate that we do have places to store these things. We have some food grade buckets that we keep a lot of it in. Like a 25-pound bag fills up these 5-gallon buckets. So we really only have to buy things like soy milk, bananas, onions, arugula, those kinds of things. Frozen vegetables. I guess we made a couple of frozen vegetable purchases. My daughter loves vegetables. They're like her favorite food. So she eats a lot of them. So that's groceries. And then for car and gas, we spent a little bit extra this month. I bought gas once and then we paid to get my husband's tires mounted. Last month he bought the tires and he bought them twice. So it was a very big expense last month because one of them was the wrong size. And so he sent those back and we actually got the refund in this month. So that was a refund of $668 and he spent $137 to get those tires mounted. So for a total, we actually spent $165 on car and gas, and after that refund it looks like we spent negative $503. So our next category was health, and this was when we took our daughter to her doctor's appointment. Typically we don't pay for her checkups, and we didn't actually have to pay for her checkup, but this was a bill from December that we had to pay that I thought that I had already paid. Apparently the doctor's office had submitted this bill and the insurance company denied it, and then they submitted it again and it was denied, and finally they submitted it and it was accepted, and so now we have to pay $137.06 additionally for her doctor's appointments that she had in December, which I had thought that I had paid for completely. So this was a bit of a surprise expense. It's kind of the downfall of having a high deductible health insurance plan is that you get hit with all of these doctor bills even after you think that you've paid them all. But we do have access to the HSA, which is a benefit. So we thought that we were going to use the HSA for some of these expenses at the beginning of the year, and so I didn't budget very much for our health sinking fund, and I thought that we had paid off all of those December bills, and so I didn't keep stocking it up. So we're still pretty negative in our health sinking fund, but I guess I'll have to bump that up in the coming months, or maybe even fund it extra this month at our final closeout. I'll have to see. I think that if we decide not to pay extra towards the retirement account loan, then it may be a good idea to bring all these funds back up from negative. I think only health is negative right now. Everything else is positive. But maybe we can use a little bit of extra of that as well. Our next and only spending was for our daughter. We bought some clothes for her at the thrift store. Actually, it was 2 shirts for her and then 3 or 4 sheets because I'm trying to make her a braided rug for her room. And so I bought some sheets to do that. We spent $11.68 on 4 sheets and 2 shirts, so that was a pretty good deal. And then we spent $20 at the doctor's office for documents for her new daycare, so they can fill out her health inventory and pull her vaccine records. That cost $20. But that is everything for her, and that's really everything for our variable spending this month so far. So that's everything for my May budget so far this month. I know we're very close to the end of the month and very close to closing this out, but we are still expecting 2 more paychecks, one for me, one for my husband, so we'll see how that ends up working out at the end of the month. We basically paid all of our fixed expenses and debts, so really we just have any variable spending that we have at the end of the month and then any extra that we'll be deciding between putting it towards our debts or just saving it. I am kind of thinking that we might save it just because even if we decide not to go with the bathroom remodel, because we do have some changes to our budget coming up in July, and I'm not really sure how that's going to impact our budget exactly, so it would be nice to have additional savings as like a buffer to weather through that. As a sneak peek, I think we're expecting that my husband's only going to be getting 1 paycheck in July. So that's going to make our budget really tight, even though we have all of our sinking funds and we'll have a bit of a buffer kind of built in to the way that we do our budget. So I'm leaning towards just keeping that money in savings for now. But let me know what you think. We do have a high yield savings account that is still currently getting us, I think, 3.95%, at least the last time I checked. And our retirement account loan, I know we're going to be missing out on time in the market, but that interest rate is 4.25%, so it's not that big of a difference in terms of missing out on the interest, but also I'm paying that interest back to myself for the retirement account. So I will be losing out, I guess, a little bit more by not paying back the retirement account, but I don't think it's that much. And I will still be making the minimum payments towards that, and I will still be planning on paying that back early, just maybe not quite as early. But also, if we have all of that in savings, we can just throw it in a lump sum if we decide against remodeling the bathroom. That's everything. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate everyone who's here. I'm really looking forward to all the new interactions with all the new faces here. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed. I really appreciate it. It helps keep me motivated on our debt-free journey. Keeps me accountable with our budgeting and our spending. And I just love all of the support here in this budgeting community. So thank you for being here.